The tournament of power held by both the Omni Kings of the present and future has now begun, with Universe 7's Majin Buu colliding against Universe 9's Basil, competing in the early preliminary rounds, with Buu seemingly at a disadvantage over Universe 9's kicker Basil. But with each passing moment that goes by, Majin Buu looks to turn the tides against Basil, as he's seemingly looking for a victory for his universe. But as the fight goes on, something occurs which plays off as a victory for the winner of this battle, and which sets up for the Universe 9 versus Universe 7 tournament to continue, as we're looking to enter the second round, which seems to involve Gohan. What's going on, Dragon Ball Super fans? Welcome to my Dragon Ball Super episode 79 breakdown review entitled Universe 9's Basil the Kicker versus Universe 7's Majin Buu, leading into Dragon Ball Super episode 80, which is going to feature Gohan. At long last, we've all been waiting to see Gohan in action for quite some time, and Gohan's going to be having his moment next week during Dragon Ball Super episode 80. And a quick plug before we begin, in case you guys are not following me at Twitter, make sure to go on ahead and follow me at Twitter at UnrealEntGaming. The link will be down in the description below for all the latest in Dragon Ball news, information, and updates. And of course, if you guys want to keep notified of what's going on, make sure to follow me at Twitter. And of course, if you guys are new to this channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button on your way out, and don't forget to turn on notifications. That way you guys yourselves are notified of whenever a Dragon Ball discussion, review, or gameplay video is posted on this channel. Your feedback and of course your support really means a lot to me, so be sure to go on ahead and spread the word about the channel, guys. It really means a lot to me. So Majin Buu's battle with Basil resumes as we finally have a definitive winner, and of course, based on Dragon Ball Super episode number 80's preview, we finally have an inside look as to what's going to be happening with Gohan, Lavenda, and of course Goku and Bergamo, which we do know those two are going to be fighting down the line after this is over. And the episode preview for next week showcases Gohan unleashing his Super Saiyan form. However, in this particular episode, we get to see how cheating is implemented, because the Supreme Kai of Universe 9 actually gave Basil something to eat, in which infuriated him and allowed Basil to grow in terms of power. And we get to see how Bergamo was talking to Lavenda about possibly killing if killing is allowed, with Bergamo telling Lavenda, kill to your heart's content. And of course, we do know that Lavenda will be fighting against Gohan next week. And in the episode preview, we get to see how Gohan's eyes are black and white. They're bruised up, they're poisoned, and he cannot see for the life of him. However, we get to also see how Lavenda seems to crave on the idea that Gohan is suffering. But then even towards the episode preview's ending, we get to see how Ultimate Gohan is standing face to face with the three brothers, the brothers of Trio Lavenda, with Bergamo in the background, because Basil in this episode had an incredible battle with Majin Buu, with obviously enough Majin Buu having to gain the victory. However, the episode preview showcases Gohan becoming a Super Saiyan before awakening his powers, because he seems to have a tough time against such a fighter, because when Majin Buu's fight was pretty much over, Gohan volunteered just to see how well he can do with his powers, because it's been a long time since Gohan has actually tested his powers. And early on in the beginning, you get to see in the episode preview, of course, that Gohan is having a very difficult time fighting this person. Poison is allowed and ring outs are no longer counted, so even if you ring your opponent out, that no longer counts as a victory. So the only way to defeat your opponent is either by knockout or possibly even killing them. And all in all, we get to see how Basil and Majin Buu's showdown pretty much displayed this, because at a certain point, Majin Buu was able to ring out Basil, with the Omni King and the Grand Priest having to pretty much object on the idea that ring outs are no longer allowed. And we also get to see, once the Supreme Kai of Universe 9 gave something for Basil to eat, you know, we get to see how Beerus pretty much says that's against the rules, it's cheating, with the Omni King saying, I don't care, I want to see what happens when Basil eats this. And we get to see right after Basil eats the food that was given to him, something happens to Basil. He begins to transform, he begins to erupt in this giant rage-like form, and he begins to stomp all over Majin Buu's face. He begins to unleash these giant ki blasts from his feet, and even so, Universe 7's Hercule and the rest of the gang were affected by the blast, and we get to see how Hercule resulted in getting caught by the crossfire, in which he injured his shoulder. And we see how once that happened, Majin Buu had somewhat of a breakdown. He began to get very, very angry, in which case he moved towards the offensive against Basil. And I will say, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but when Majin Buu started throwing down against Basil, even though at first he was unable to hit him, Majin Buu went on the offensive and he beat the ever so living dog piss out of this character. He threw him around the ring, he threw him through some pillars, even to the point where he ringed them out. However, that goes back to my point where the Omni King and the Grand Priest said, it doesn't matter if you ring your opponent out, that rule is no longer in effect. So even if someone gets ringed out, out, the match still continues regardless of what just happened. So we get to see how Majin Buu thought that he had the upper hand, and he thought that he won until the Supreme Kai of Universe 9 gave something for Basil to eat, and once that happened, Basil turned the tides around on Buu, and he began to beat Buu down to the point where Buu, even though he was unaffected, we get to see him stand up with a giant hole in his stomach, and even after that, Basil was in this rage mode. He gave it to Buu, and it was ineffective. Buu actually survived all of Basil's attacks without, suffering any major, damages to his body, and even after resulting in seeing Hercule get hurt, that's what triggered Buu to go on the offensive and essentially unleash this giant Kamehameha-like blast in which brought Basil down. And Bergamo was not happy by this, and of course during this episode, if you guys pay attention, we get to see how Goku is staring down Bergamo from across the ring, similar to how he did against Hit during Universe 6 versus Universe 7. We see Goku just eyeing him down, with Bergamo pretty much having no regard for Goku. Even after Basil was defeated, we get to see how Gohan volunteers because Gohan wants to test his powers, and with Lavenda asking Bergamo if in fact we can kill, in which Bergamo responds by saying you can kill to your heart's content. And this episode was an easy 10 out of 10. The back and forth pace, everyone thought Majin Buu pretty much had it in the bag once he ringed out Basil, but of course due to the Omni King and the Grand Priest, they said no, that rule is ineffective. And once Bergamo, sensed that Basil was in danger, we saw how the Supreme Kai of Universe 9 just quickly gave him something. And even with that, we get to see how Goku even said to Gohan and Hercule how it's kind of crazy how he wasn't able to detect the other wolves' energy. You can't detect their ki, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're gods, because I know certain people are gonna go off the rail and say, yeah, those wolves have to be gods. No, that's not the case at all. However, Goku did point out on the idea that yes, their energies cannot be felt, so you can't feel the ki, you can't feel the energy of these wolves in the least. So there's something about these wolves that sets them apart, because we don't really know, what they're made of. We don't know their origins, we don't know their backstory. However, even with their unknown backstory and their unknown origins, we can't detect their ki, we can't detect their sight, so there's something about them that separates them. Even the Supreme Kai of Universe 9, Ro, kept stressing that these are the 3 dangerous brothers of Universe 9, with the Elder Kai having to talk about how that was a pretty stupid name. So I love how Beerus pretty much interjected when he found out that the Supreme Kai gave Basil something to eat. I love how the Elder Kai was pretty much downplaying what the other Supreme Kai was talking about. Even Kibito told, the other Kais and Beerus and whatnot that the other Supreme Kai from Universe 9, Ro, is a very disrespectful Kaioshin. He's a very rude Kaioshin, and to many people that also resembles, and if you go back and look at it, he looks like Zamasu. He kind of has like that Zamasu arrogance. He's obviously not Zamasu, but he carries himself as if he's hot stuff and he knows everything and he's a big shot and his universe is better. And they kept taunting how Universe 7 was weak, Universe 7 was weak, Universe 7 was weak. We saw how, Basil was talking about Majin Buu was weak. We saw how even Ro, the Supreme Kai from Universe 9, said, oh well, Basil can easily clear out Universe 7 by himself, because of the assumption that he had off of Basil fighting Majin Buu in the beginning. But once Basil, got the tide to turn around, and once Majin Buu kicked his butt, we saw how right away the wolves pretty much had like a change in demeanor, and now we see Gohan going up against one of the strongest fighters, that being Lavenda, and him having to test his powers against such a character. We see how his eyes are completely shot, they're gone. Even during some shots of the episode preview, Gohan seems to be out of the loop for a bit. I mean, yeah, during the early portions he seems to be keeping up, but whatever it is that Lavenda does to Gohan's eyes, Gohan cannot possibly see a thing. He's gonna have to result in using his instincts, but of course the downside is Gohan, alongside Goku and everyone else, cannot sense their ki. So how are you supposed to combat someone that you can't see them and you can't feel their powers? So it's going to be a sticky situation for Gohan. But even with the rules kind of being mixed match, we don't really know if killing is 100% allowed, at least as of right now. It could possibly be, and if poison's allowed, I can only assume that either knockout or death are one of the 2 methods that could easily gain someone the victory here, as opposed to submission or ring out. So post your comments down below, guys. What are your overall thoughts on Gohan having to be blinded? What are your overall thoughts in Majin Buu not really taking anything seriously until Hercule got hurt? And even once that happened, he saw Basil as a playmate the entire time until that very thing happened. Now people might be wondering, well, since when did Buu have healing abilities? He offered to heal Hercule. Even towards the very end, we see how he's eating cake and he's having a good time. Majin Buu is engulfed in innocence, and once his best friend, i.e. Hercule, gets hurt, he gets triggered. So hopefully enough, maybe they're gonna play off the idea that someone's gonna have to keep hurting Hercule in order for Majin Buu to get triggered more and more to take the fight serious. However, I want to know your thoughts down below on Basil in terms of what he ate, because after he ate whatever it was that the Kai gave him, his powers, everything about him, his speed, he was able to push back Majin Buu, and nobody out there can deny that he was pushing back Buu, not in an essence of strength, but pushing him back physically until Buu was forced to do what he had to do to survive. But what are your overall thoughts on what he ate? What are your overall thoughts on the masked fighter having to grab that massive ki energy and squishing it between his hands? He is going to be such a problem. I do believe his name is Topo, and he stands with universe number 11, which comes from the Pride Justice Warrior. So this is going to be kind of interesting to see how he's going to fare up against Goku and everyone else, because this person is the leader of the Pride Troopers, and he is said to be ridiculously powerful, as we saw a brief glimpse of him just grabbing that energy blast with one of his arms and completely annihilating it with complete ease. What are your overall thoughts on the Kaioshin as well? Because the Omni Kings weren't really impressed with what happened between Buu and Basil, in which case, I mean, yeah, they want to see more, which is why Gohan is up next. But I want to know your thoughts down below as to what triggers Gohan, because we do know as of right now what triggers Buu to, you know, consistently having to push his boundaries and push his limits to fight. So we know what pushes Buu, but what do you guys believe is going to be able to trigger Gohan to do the same? Post your comments down below, guys. Thank you all for watching. If you guys are ready for next week's episode, go ahead and punch that like button square in the face. If you guys love Dragon Ball, go ahead and subscribe to this channel for all the latest in Dragon Ball news, information, updates, reviews, and discussions. Tune back in for more. Obviously enough, this entire episode, and we get to see how even the female God of Destruction in this episode spoke about how Buu was pretty much taking the fight too lightly. Why is he laughing? And I love the idea that finally she has something to say, or at least the other gods for that matter have something to say, that instead of them being silent, they have more or less a personality. And even with the Grand Priest, we saw the way he looked at Beerus, and Beerus just trembled. And that was just amazing for something like that for me to see, because finally we have authority, we have other gods interacting, even somewhat. And I do believe that even based off this tournament, we saw how quickly the Grand Priest just snapped his fingers and everything pretty much came aligned. We saw how the ring was fixed, we saw how everything came to be, and it was pretty insane to see the influence of the Grand Priest and the Omni Kings in the fact that they don't really care as to what happens, so as long as they see a good fight. So post your comments down below, guys. Thank you all for watching. Tune in for the prediction video, and I'll be seeing each and every single one of you guys down in the comment section below. Take it easy, guys, and God bless. Peace.